We have to start with some bad news, fellas. We got to start with the news that Gio Reyna is hurt once again. And Heath, I'm going to come to you first on this. Is it Gio Reyna's fault, or can we start putting blame on Borussia Dortmund's physios? They're people that are supposed to be taking care of him. It just doesn't seem to be working. They seem to have a lot of injuries this particular season. What say you, Heath Pearce?
You know, I actually really want Charlie's take on this because he went through so much physically to get back to the level that he played at after his accident. But for me, as I went through my career, I started to realize over time just how human the people you are dealing with around you. You know, when you grow up as a kid, you listen to adults as if it's the gospel and everything is right. And as you become adult, you start to realize over time that people are doing their best, but they don't always have the answer necessarily. And it caused a lot of trust issues for me with trainers, coaches, things like that throughout my career, because you start to question like, oh yeah, motive and intent. But obviously with regard to Gio Reyna in this one, they've got plenty of resources to get him to the best doctors. Germany has some of the best doctors in the world, the best specialists in the world, and I'm sure he's gone through all of those. But biomechanically, I'm sure he's just got some sort of issues where his body is, you know, we've obviously seen him over the last few years sprout up into being a very tall flower, and you know, a tall drink of water, as they would say. And his body has gone through a lot of changes, and now they're trying to identify what those are. The problem for me was that they basically said that we found it, you know, and it was like, we found the issue. And I've never heard somebody come out on an issue and say we found it. Like, we identified the root of the problem. We've solved that problem, and now we're good. And I was shocked. I've literally in my entire life never heard somebody sort of identify the root, because, you know, sports science is so fluid of, you know, compensation and where you're feeling and where it's actually coming from on your body could be a million different things. And so when they were like, we got him, I was kind of shocked. Charlie, I don't know for you, you know, if you have any similar stories or anecdotes to be able to share around that.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at Gio Reyna, he's a young player. He has the world in front of him. He's playing next to a striker in Holland who's been floated with the world's best clubs, right? He's on this trajectory, I think, similar to Holland, not at that same level, but he's a world superstar for his age. Everyone in the world recognizes him for the quality that he has. You're hungry, you're determined, you want to be at that level. You want to be considered with the likes of Phil Foden and, you know, even Jude Bellingham and some of these top young players in the world. I've been there where you have an injury and it derails you and you have a couple of setbacks. Now, the problem is we don't know why this is happening to Gio Reyna, but what we do know is any young player, any player who does go through the injury process, you're rushing to get back. The physios can only do so much. They can say, this is your game plan, this is how we get you there. But as a player, you're always pushing the limit. You're towing the limit. And I think in his case, like any player, you want to get back to 100% match fitness, 90 minutes, every single match, playing every minute. And sometimes you push yourself over the limit because you get carried away and you get lost in it. It's so easy to get lost in it.
But I mean, it's partially the trainer's job, right? Or the staff's job to protect the player from themselves, because like you would play 90 minutes every day if you could.
Yeah, but they can't control you ultimately. They can tell you do this, X, Y, Z, but you're always going to push for more. And I think that's the tough part, especially with younger players, is they don't know the limits. They haven't been through, you know, if they're in their 30s, then you're saying, okay, I can pump the brakes. I can take the rest of the season off. But as a youngster, you're not hearing those words. It goes in one ear, out the other, because you're hungry and you're motivated and you don't know kind of the patience process is the most important part of the recovery. And you have no control over that, only time. And that's really tough to understand and digest as a younger player.
No question. I got three things for everybody. First, apparently Borussia Dortmund are going to part ways with their longtime physio, Thomas Zetzman, at the end of the season, according to Sky Germany. So
they do have a lot of injuries, by the way. Dortmund
a ton. Second, it's clear that Heath Pearce stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night because the guy's spouting out doctor stuff. So I appreciate that.
Dr. Heath Pearce.
Dr. Hollywood Heath Pearce right now. And then third, I actually wanted to get into the mind-body connection because is there some stress going on in his life off the field that might be impacting what's happening on the field? And maybe to add to your point, Charlie, is the stress coming from him just trying to do too much too soon? Now, I'm going to give everybody a personal story that I went through, but I was more of a grown-ass man at this point. But I got a call from Bob Bradley ahead of the 2007 Gold Cup and Copa America. We were on the phone, and as you know with Bob, they're never 5-minute conversations. They're about 45 minutes long. And ultimately, he asked me if I would play in both tournaments over the summer. So I'd be gone for probably 8 weeks away from my family. And my wife, who hadn't had a baby yet prior to that call, we had our first baby about 3 weeks later. And at that point, once the baby came around, we were collectively, my wife and I, like, this is a long time to be away, especially with a newborn and just that adjustment from having 0 kids to 1 kid and putting all that pressure on my wife to, yeah, you got it, no problem. I'm going to go out and live my dream. You take care of the kid, you know? And so I had my own guilt and stress that was involved with that. Now, prior to me going with the Gold Cup team, I pulled my hamstring in Denver. Now, you guys know that I took good care of myself. I did a lot of yoga. I was very thoughtful about taking care of my body and trying to extend my career for as long as possible. I never got hamstring strains, but I actually believe it was due to the stress that I was under mentally that ultimately led to a physical ailment that I think solved my problem. I couldn't go to the Gold Cup, and I played in the Copa America. So I wonder, do you think there's any mind-body connection there, Hollywood Heath, that might be happening? Dr. Hollywood Heath, excuse me. I know you worked hard for that.
Yeah. That's I went to school my whole life to be a doctor. So please put that in my name. But I think there's the.
But what is it though? He's only 19.
I mean, but clearly he's on this mission, and age I don't think has to do with. I think every day is a day towards where he wants to go, and now he's starting to have these setbacks, and especially when you're 19. You've never had to go through this stuff generally at 19, right? You bounce back so quick. You never have real long setbacks. Even if you get injuries when you're a youth player, it's all sort of a blur from my youth era. And I remember getting injured at times, but for the most part, you don't stretch, you don't warm up, you don't blah, blah, blah. You kind of, that comes when you're older. And now he's having to sort of step into this realm at 19 years old and go through this constant injuries where he wants to be on the field. I know he's got this 2022 World Cup in the back of his mind. I know he's got this could be potentially the best U.S. player ever in the back of his mind. We've said all that about him. So, of course, he's carrying this stress to see these setback after setback after setback at just his age. And now we're starting to say, well, like, can he ever be fully fit? You know, we put Christian Pulisic into this injury concern. He's always injured. He's always injured. That's not something somebody wants to deal with. So I guarantee you there's a lot of emotional, mental stress. I mean, he's crying when he gets injured. Right. I mean, that shows everything.
I would say it's more of a rough patch, because if it's a player who's getting multiple injuries in different types of injuries, then you're like, okay, this is a player who just can't escape injury because it seems to just always follow him. This is just an isolated incident. This is a hamstring, and it's the same hamstring. So what it comes down to is recovery time, strengthening, recovery, not pushing it. And that's a long process. It's not something that it's
longer than we ever give ourselves. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a hamstring. Okay, what's the prognosis? 6 to 8 weeks, and you're good to go. But it's not 6 to 8 weeks. It's so much longer than that, because there's that maintenance that you have to constantly do for. It could be up to a year on that hamstring, and then you got to look at compensation. Is other parts of my body compensating for the weakness in this hamstring? And then how's your left quad? How's your glutes? Maybe there's other parts of your body that's affecting the hamstring. There's so much that goes into it. And I think this is just a period where it's not going to last. He's going to grow from it. I think he's going to learn a ton about his body, but also a ton about what it means to be a professional athlete and the patience you have to give yourself. I am certain that once he gets over this hump, we're not going to be talking about injuries with Gio Reyna.